have our program, The Secrets of Microvita. And it's going to be presented by Guy Prouty, PhD, and he is a medical anthropologist and teaches at Boise State University. He will present how indigenous peoples use plants for medicine, revealing that the awareness of subtle healing energy is ancient. Joshua Nelson, a DO, is a retired physician of neurology, and he will be explaining the science of Microvita. And then we'll have Jeffrey Zimmerman. He's an OMD, a doctor of Oriental medicine, and he will be leading a practical demonstration of the power of Microvita. Guy, Joshua, and Jeffrey are here today to share with us what they have learned and are still learning about Microvita. So I will start by presenting Guy.
I will be talking about the mystery of plant medicines. Let me start with a question. Can you imagine a world where people had no pharmacies or none exist today? People for many tens of thousands of years have been using plants to treat injury and illness. Thus, through diligent experimentation, peoples of the past and modern day indigenous peoples have become experts in botany, and they really rival the knowledge that modern day scientists have to this day. For example, the inner bark of a common willow being crushed up and applied to wounds. It works because of the chemical salicin, which is found in modern day aspirin. Now, recent advances in the field of ethnobotany, or the study of how plants are used for medicine, food, and technology, along with studies in quantum physics, has got me to thinking, what made these healers so successful? What is the mystery behind this? So let's explore this a bit more deeply with another example. This Aka medical healer knows her business very well and highly values the power of plants that maintain and promote human nutrition and health. Now, the power of plant medicines, however, lie far deeper than chemistry. Deep feelings, emotions, attitudes, and memories embody traditional medical practice throughout the world. Even stories are considered medicine. And I will tell you a remarkable story in just a moment. But just hang on for a second, and I will explain in more detail what this power is. Due to short lifespans and serious injuries and debilitating diseases because of poor sanitation, the Aka people have little resistance to disease. They have malaria, there's parasites, they're addicted to opium, and they're quite isolated. And it's just a general tough lifestyle. But as a result of these challenges that they have developed an acute knowledge of treating themselves with wild and domesticated plants. This Aka headman, for example, uses the pounded bark and leaves of the broken bones plant to apply to cuts and bruises. Thus, what is the subtle power embodied by shamans and healers, medicinal plants, and secret healing rituals to treat sickness, injury, and even spiritual struggle? The power is called Microvita. But what are Microvita, according to P.R. Sakar, the noted tantric yogic spiritualist who first introduced Microvita to the world in the 1980s? Microvita are subatomic small life particles of creation and are present throughout the universe. And there are three basic types: positive, neutral, and negative. I will only briefly discuss positive and negative Microvita, and I will let Joshua Nelson explain the science in more detail after I finish. Now, what is amazing is that Microvita can move through sound, solids, fluids, and other forms, and they are the creation of all life rather than carbonized protozoa. This is what modern day biologists believe how life was created, was through the carbon, right? But these microvita, in essence, they comprise a flow of subtle energy, which we call prana, which Joshua and Jeff will discuss in more detail during their presentations. Most significantly, the subtler microvita, both negative and positive, move through ideas as just described. And those with highly developed minds can perceive them, such as the Akam medical herbalist I just introduced. Thus, it appears that traditional healers know that this subtle energy can affect human beings, both individually and collectively, by impacting the physical and psychic structures, i.e., the body and the mind. It is through their sacred traditions and healing practices that can create a positive environment in which to heal. And the transmission of positive microvita is deeply layered within their sacred traditions, plants, and animal medicines and healing stories. Positive microvita enter the body or mind and create comfortable feelings. And this can be very blissful. Negative microvita, on the other hand, even a few particles, create negative feelings and psychic diseases such as schizophrenia, mania, and depression, and so forth. Now, let's stack back in time a bit. Shamans, who are guides and links between the physical and spiritual worlds, use ritual and psychoactive plants, such as we see here with this tinglet healer here. And in their belief system regarding medical care, they thought that illness resulted due to the loss of the soul from the body. And so to cure the patient, the shaman, as shown here, recovered the soul in the spirit world. And here he is using a bone tool in which to do this. He's breathing through this looks like a tibia here at the patient. Thus, positive microvita pass through deeply spiritual emotions in both the minds of the shaman and the patient, along with the chemicals and psychoactive plants. And because of this, the afflicted were cured. Now, this is quite different from the practice of modern day medical practice. And I think we are missing out on an important element of medical treatment, that of paying deep attention to emotions and the subtle connections between the mind, body, and spirit. Let's look at the Dakota Sioux. Here we see this particular healer preparing medicine in a bowl while shaking a gourd rattle and chanting an invocation. Thus, traditional herbalists use plants during purification, healing, and burial rituals, rites of passage, and vision quest. Here on Vancouver Island, we see that the Takat woman, she lives on the northern shore of Vancouver Island during the late 19th century. They considered that medicinal plants were sacred and contained supernatural powers. And they were a special gift from the gods to earthly humans. And this is still widely believed among indigenous peoples throughout the world. Here we see this Ashahataway, a Cree medicine man in northern Saskatchewan, and he is smoking an effigy pipe. Now, these effigy pipes were typically look like animals, and these pipes contained hallucinogenic tobacco. They smoked these pipes during sacred ceremonies and rituals, and moose effigies were common. Recently, I heard a Cree Métis grandmother by the name of Maria Campbell of Edmonton, Alberta, tell a story of her father's moose hunting expeditions. Moose meat was important, but not only because of the food that they offered to sustain themselves, but also because of the medicine. Now, moose wallow in shallow water, eating lotus leaves, seeds, roots, among bulrush and other aquatic plants. Now, since these plants have medicinal value, eating moose nose was considered a special treat as their healing power was passed on down through the moose to the people. It was a gift from the Creator. And creamy tea, telling stories of the connection of plants and animals, is considered powerful medicine for self-healing. And again, I would like to think that it is a power of Microvita being passed down through ideas, through their legacy and history, that have an important role in traditional healthcare. Here in Siberia, we see that shamans use drums along with psychoactive fly argic mushrooms. And these protected the souls of the ill and also protected the shaman from malicious spirits. Here in the Amazon, we see these trio healers, and they recognize and treat 70 distinct illnesses with psychoactive plants. They treat fevers, Bell palsy, pneumonia, kidney infections, and tuberculosis, for example. And there's many other afflictions that they treat. Now, Western medical doctors have worked with the trio and have learned that their traditional plant medicines are very effective for the treatment and cure. This particular shaman on the right here actually co-authored a paper with a physician who came out here to study the ethnomedicine of the trio. And through dedicated science, they were able to document with good evidence that these treatments with medicinal plants and with the power of Microvita are very powerful. So it's quite impressive. Okay, for further reading or research, if you want to look into this more deeply, this is a great encyclopedia called Native American Ethnobotany. This is by Daniel Moraman. I think he's from the University of Michigan. And it outlines thousands of plants that were used as traditional medicines and foods. And this is Ellen Squickvin of the Confederate Tribe of Warm Springs, collecting wild huckleberries. And I once worked as an archaeologist at the Pueblo Zuni in northwestern New Mexico. And Rita Adaki, who is a traditional bearer for the Zuni, she asked me to take her photo of her book to reintroduce traditional Zuni foods that would heal them. Of the 10,000 tribal residents, roughly 2,000 of them have type 2 diabetes, and her goal was to reverse this trend with traditional Zuni foods. As noted, the idea and practice of providing proper nutrition, I contend, did spread positive microvita throughout the Zuni village. So a few concluding remarks. Positive microvita has great potential to treat injury, illness, and disease. Although traditional peoples have no formal understanding of microvita itself, they understand these subtle powers of these healing plants, which I hope you have learned to appreciate through this short presentation. And traditional knowledge of plant medicines needs to be preserved because that knowledge can disappear. There's, if we look at the Aka people, for example, they are facing a lot of threats. That traditional knowledge of their plant medicines is disappearing. And they're just having a very difficult time keeping that knowledge alive. And finally, scientists really need to intensify their efforts to use microvita in all forms of healing. And both Joshua and Jeff will explore this in more detail. So, any questions? Joshua?
Thank you, Guy. That was amazing program, amazing pictures. I wonder if you have a feeling or if the Native people had some name for this energy or this life force Or did each individual clan or tribe have its own name for this kind of life force?
Well, yesterday I heard another Cree woman by the name of Nora talk about plant medicines. And she was calling from Edmonton, or just north of Edmonton. And she basically stated that among the Cree, she didn't refer to a specific name for the traditional plant medicines, but as a gift from the creator. So they said that they don't worship plants, they don't worship animals, like in the totem, in the pipe that I showed you that he was smoking. They don't worship the animals themselves. She says that's a misunderstanding. They just think it is a gift from the creator. And so, it's a good question, but as far as I know, I don't think they had any specific names for traditional plant medicines. Genevieve.
So I don't understand, what is the trio exactly?
The trio live in South America. They're in the Amazon. They're in the northwestern part of South America.
Oh, so that's a people.
They're people, yes. They're called
Okay.
the trio.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
They too are facing challenges from maintaining their traditional ethnobotanical knowledge because the Amazon is being threatened by logging and cattle ranching and government pressures to clear all that land. And again, we need to get in there and work with them to preserve that ancient knowledge, because they've been practicing this knowledge for thousands of years. And that's why they have become so successful in their treatments. It's through repeated experimentation passed down from generation to generation to generation to generation. And we really need to learn to appreciate that sacred knowledge they have of the plant world. And what I find fascinating just really embodies such a broader perspective of medicine and the human life, being a good human. And living and being a good human, as Nora was telling me yesterday, requires that all of us be in great physical health and that we treat each other well. And by treating each other well and showing respect for one another, that creates good medicine too. So again, I think that positive microvita is, when it's passed down through ideas like this, especially if they're good, if we have good intentions of treating each other with respect and love, the positive microvita is created, and they know that because they see it work. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Hafiz.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's any specific practices for those of us who live in a city, for instance, to open up more to plant medicines. Like for me, just growing herbs, growing plants, and being around them is a medicine unto itself. But some people meditate with plants. And is there any specific practices, whether you grow plants or not, to open up to that energy?
Well, I think that there's plenty of opportunities for us to do that. Now, there's all sorts of resources out there and books and apps. Like, for example, there's an app I just discovered that you can download on your cell phone. I think it's called Plant ID. You can take a photograph of a plant, and then it shares it to a database, and then it'll tell you what that plant is, and it'll provide some information about that. And from there, you can start doing your research. Like, for example, there's a common so-called weed that grows around here. It grows in your neighborhood too, I'm sure. It's called purple dead nettle. And it's actually not a nettle, but a mint. And it grows in very disturbed areas, and it's all over, but it has great medicinal value. You can collect the leaves and the flowers from the young plant and make a nice tea out of them, and it's an anti-inflammatory. The seeds can use to make dyes for fabrics and so forth. So there's a lot of different uses to this, what we to these plants, which we consider weeds. So it's just a matter of opening up our eyes and exploring more deeply what these plants are that grow in our backyards. And so there, again, there's a lot of resources out there that you can look at to learn about the medicinal properties of these plants. And Daniel Moorman's book on North American ethnobotany is a great resource. It's a big, thick book, and it just goes into detail how traditional peoples throughout the North American continent have used plants for medicine. Joshua, you're next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Nelson, and we're going to go a little bit more into the science of microvita. This is really microvita for beginners because we're all learning about this. This is very new for us all. There is so much still to be discovered. And you'll see as we go along that there's lots of areas for research still. First, let's get right down to the basics. What do we think microvita really is? Well, the basic is that they're very, very tiny living entities. They are alive. They are alive. They actually arise, multiply, and die just like living beings. They are the smallest physical and psychic entities. Well, I might interject here. My internet has been a bit slow, I could tell. At least you have the text to go with here, but I hope you can hear me okay. Okay, microvita come from the realm of the cosmic mind. They can affect the chakras, the energy centers in the body. They can come right out of solid matter when the solid matter is put under stress. And they can come together to form an individual mind. There are 3 densities and 3 qualities. We won't spend too much time on that, but just to get you some idea that they come in different quantities and densities, and they can code for subatomic particles, even DNA, RNA, mRNA. Now, Western science really doesn't have a good grasp on microvita so far. Here's a picture of an old electron microscope. Even without it, it would be hard to see much microvita, but we'll see in just a second. Now, they've been part of Eastern philosophy, though, for quite a while. With progress in I think we will be able to unlock their physical nature, but it'll take deep meditation to unlock the psychic nature of microvita. Here's contrasting microvita with energies. Microvita are not energy, they are life force. Microvita arise, multiply, and die, whereas with energy, energy cannot be created or destroyed, although it may be transformed. Microvita even have a conscience, whereas energy is a blind force. Now, yogis have known about microvita for a long time. In Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, it mentions lifetrons 5 times. These are described as being smaller than electrons and carrying energy or prana. Well, that sounds a lot like microvita. They carry subtle life forces intelligently charged with 5 distinctive sensory idea substances. You'll see that that also goes along with microvita. Not only that, but our present day quantum physics might hint at microvita just a little, because quantum physics is going to tell us that they are discrete things that make up physical matter. So discrete, that's the important word. Max Planck back in the 1900s postulated that electromagnetic energy was absorbed and emitted in discrete packets or quanta. Very interesting that they're just packets, not just one spectrum, but individual packets of energy, or life force, I should say. Now, although energy and microvita are different, this does support the existence of microvita. This is Max Planck's simple little equation for energy and the Planck constant and frequency. Here we've got a picture of a carbon nanotube. This is a carbon nanotube. This would be a tube in this picture, and those dots are actually carbon atoms. This is probably the smallest resolution we can get to. This would be the crudest form of microvita, though. So there are three densities: crude, ordinary, and subtle. Crude being smaller than a proton, barely visible; ordinary being on the cusp between physical and psychic; and purely psychic, carried on waves through idea substances. Crude microvita is instrumental in emanating life throughout the cosmos. It helps to code DNA. This process led to the emergence of dinosaurs, then mammals, then intelligent human beings. So there is a progression here. Onto ordinary microvita, just between physical and mental. We cannot really see them, but we can still measure them. This is a picture of a bubble chamber, an old bubble chamber, and you can see these tracks here across the picture. Those are tracks of atomic particles. We can't see the particle, but we can see the track that it leaves behind. Same way with microvita. Not really seeable, but measurable. Finally, the subtle microvita. Too subtle to be seen even with an electron microscope. They function through sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. The word for that is yakshas. And finally, the most subtle other category functions directly only within the subtle realm within the human mind. Very subtle, only in ideas. And we have three qualities of microvita: positive, neutral, and negative. I want to get across the idea, though, that these are relative terms. All through this talk of microvita, you have to expand your mind a little bit, because what might be positive for one person or for one entity might be negative for another. We'll go over that. First, positive microvita. If a mighty spiritual teacher so wishes, he might emanate positive microvita through his own waves and create similar vibrations in another human body. But only a spiritual teacher of high regard would be able to do this. Positive microvita usually make up the parts of the body involved in the Agana chakra and from the neck up. Stepping down to ordinary microvita, though, these mostly affect the abdomen, chest, kidneys, and liver, but there is some overlap. Because with the negative microvita, again, we have kidneys, then colon, reproductive, and excretory organs. Negative microvita are more liable to function on their own. They usually function from the Manipura chakra, the third chakra, on down. Concentrated negative microvita are usually not used because if they did, they could make a person very, very sick, even bring to death. This picture says friends are enemies sometimes, and enemies friends. That is, they can be changeable. Same thing with microvita. While some microvita are your enemies, those which are your enemies may also become your friends if controlled by good people. So it depends on the situation. Microvita aren't so cut and dry. Again, it takes some expansiveness of thought to wrap your head around what microvita really are. I just want to show you some categories of microvita here. We talked a little bit about yakshas. They are actually responsible for greed and the thoughts of capitalism. They're parts of Devyonis, which are beings that are composed of microvita. Another one is called Gandharva, Kinara, Vidyadhara, Vidahalina, Praktiralina, and Siddha, Siddha Devionis, which are all collective names for different categories of microvita. Okay, let's talk about movement of microvita. Microvita move through smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. This we call inferences. Microvita can move locally across the cosmos. Does anyone recognize these two people on the bottom part of the picture? There's some very famous folks for us. Here we have Vivekananda with the turban and Nikola Tesla. They were good friends. They had the kind of minds that could be so subtle, they would apprehend these types of microvita. Microvita can be involved in viral and bacterial disease. Bad thoughts can increase negative microvita. Positive thoughts can protect. There are 5 sacred trees that can be involved with microvita. And these sacred trees are the peepal tree, the banyan tree, the amla tree, the ashok tree. These trees are used in India to help create positive microvita, a protected space. Microvita are not based on carbon. If you remember back to your basic science, carbon compounds were thought to be organic compounds. Now, this is more subtle than that. Not only carbon atoms, but all other kinds of atoms are the creation of microvita. In fact, billions of microvita produce a single carbon atom. That's how small we're talking about. Let's talk about a few compounds here. Consider calcium phosphate. Chemically, 2 samples of calcium phosphate might carry the same amount of oxygen. So they may have the same calcium, the same phosphate, the same oxygen. Yet they may have different amounts of microvita in them. Microvita present in the oxygen of a sample A may be 10 million more than in sample B. And so in a chemical reaction, the results may be different between these two, what we thought were the identical, but not quite, compounds. Also with crop variability. Even with similar growing conditions, the size and taste of vegetables is not exactly uniform. Differences in microvita can produce this difference. This type of thing has been proven in Findhorn in Scotland. Some of you may have heard about their famous gardens. Medicines as well. New pharmacology will begin to reveal how much microvita is required to produce particular kinds of medicinal effects. And accordingly, a scientist would be able to evolve accurate and effective formulae for various medicines. So the medicines can carry the microvita and the effect can be especially different. Homeopathy and energy-based medicine may be using this type of process with microvita. Medicine prepared in a sentient environment by sentient people from a medium which is also sentient will attract more positive microvita than ordinary medicines, so will have a much greater effect in helping a patient. I just want to say here that meditation attracts much more positive microvita. Negative microvita can only be controlled by positive microvita. The positive microvita are thought to quote unquote eat the negative microvita. Even in education, and this is a symbol of neo-humanist education, even in education, the physico-psychic aspect of students can be improved through yoga, asana, proper diet, games, sports, etc. This kind of neo-humanist philosophy and the practices of Ashtanga yoga should be put into the curriculum of all ages. And the controlling philosophy would be, this universe is ours, and we means humans, animals, and plants. So this is a universal type of philosophy that we need to deal with when thinking of Microvita. All of the 50 petals of the chakras are affected by positive or negative microvita. So the microvita even affect our subtle nervous system. Finally, my teacher says, by dint of our meditation, that is our physico, psycho, spiritual sadhana, our knowledge will develop in all strata, and the power of cognition will also develop. And with that developed cognitive power, we will know all the secrets of this microvita. There are a few books coming out these days. One called New Science, Cosmology, and the Theory of Microvita by Nolan and Lisk, and another, Microvita by Dr. Hans-Joachim Rudolph. More coming out all the time, it seems. There's a lot of interest in microvita. Okay, thank you very much.
I have one question. Yeah, I've heard that that one can build a glass pyramid, and that can infuse your medicines, and it can also something about the shape of the pyramid can bring about deeper healing. So does anybody know anything about this? I'm really curious.
I think here we're getting into the research area of microvita. There is so much we don't know, and so many things that could be applicable to research. And we could have one group of medicines that were treated with the pyramid, another group of medicines that were not, and with some hopefully objective studies, we could look into that and see with a easily double-blind placebo-controlled trial what the results would be.
Well, I'm really interested in doing it, so maybe I'll report back in a few years.
Sounds exciting.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nelson and Dr. Prouty. This is fascinating, and as we've all pointed out, we're in the process of learning and sharing the information. So we started a website, microvitahealing.com, but we want everybody to, join us, help us in your research, any ideas and thoughts. We'd all like to work together on this. So before I even knew the term microvita healing, we were playing with the energy of food. So this is my PowerPoint presentation for all of us to play with. Okay, so to begin with, let me give you a little bit of background of the things that we did, and then we're all going to experience positive microvita, and we're all going to try to change the energy of this food. So whatever you have, and if you don't have anything with you, you can try it later. A chef brought me into the State University of New York and said, because he noticed that I was changing energy in his body, changing the microvita. So what we did is we blindfolded, he figured, let's try it with food. So we blindfolded students in the front of the class, and we put positive energy, positive microvita into, like, we cut a carrot in half, right? And we put positive microvita to this half and leave this half alone. We did it with multiple foods, multiple students, and we did it multiple times. And once the energy, the microvita was activated, people say, this tastes better than this. And it was 100% across the board until one person gave us, no, that doesn't, I can't tell the difference. And we found that they were chewing on mint gum. But prior to that, we had 100% that people can tell the difference. So we followed up and we did an entire dinner at somebody's house where we took, meat, vegetables, fruits, and we cut everything up. And again, this is before I knew about Microvita and the details that Dr. Nelson and Dr. Prouty were giving us. Okay, so that's why I love the fact they're all working together to understand this more. And what we did is we cut the food in half, and this half we did positive Microvita, and this half we did negative Microvita. And we brought out, let's say, a chicken breast, and we put both plates down. These people were in a whole nother room, and they said, "Wow, this tastes much better than this. This doesn't taste good. This tastes good." So we effectively did this with multiple types. It was a lot of fun because they didn't know what they were tasting, but we knew in the back what we were doing. And I'd be encouraged, if you guys want to play with energy and give us feedback, done the same, and do this at home for yourselves. Just have fun with it. Like, real happy thoughts, really good energy, and see if you notice the difference. And we're going to do a little bit of that today. We took this a little bit further. And what we had somebody do, they used medical marijuana. Took a bud, broke it in half, put half of it away, and then we put the positive energy into the other half. And then they took it to another state, Rhode Island, and they put it under spectrum chromatography. They took two pieces of the same plant and put it under that spectrum chromatography and saw that the one with positive Microvita was better. And that's what Dr. Nelson was talking about. I mean, we have all sorts of opportunities to really begin to understand the process. And we're going to start that today. So I just want you to, take a step back, have fun, nothing serious, but we're going to go through this, shortly. Just want to add one other piece, actually two other pieces. One piece is that quantum physics broke down the universe into two forces, and they call them upward quarks and downward quarks. And again, all this information is going to be on the microvitahealing.com website, so you guys can see it and explore with the greatest scientists on the planet. And so this force going upward and the force going downward is what we're going to begin to work with a little bit today. In Chinese medicine, they talk about a force, what they call yin going upward, and they talk about a force called yang going downward. Until the 70s, nobody even discovered this, so it was all hocus pocus until they figured out the upward quarks and downward quarks. And we have so much more to explore. One other point before we begin. When you talk about sometimes negative Microvita being what you need in Chinese medicine, sometimes they'll use a poison in an herbal formula to deal with a medical condition, right? If you're bit by a snake, for example, there are certain poisons, negative Microvita, that are going to interact in a specific way in the body in order to cause the healing. That's why this is just going to be so amazing and so much fun to explore and put all of our heads together to, learn. We're going to be smart about it. So with no further ado, I'm opening up my PowerPoint presentation and recommend that anybody else wants to do this. And if you don't want to do it, you can do it later. Basically going to cut the orange in half. And we've done this so many times. So you might be new to this, but we've done it a lot just to test it out. If you'd like, and this, by the way, we've done this with wine besides, meats and foods and everything else. We've done it with wine as well. You take a look at your orange, you look at both sides, you smell both sides, and then if you want to, you taste both sides. Now, most people, it looks the same, it smells the same, and it tastes the same. Great, that's exactly what we hope. We're gonna, just for ease of sake, we're gonna cut another one into half. And you can cut it into small pieces as you want. I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. This is our control. We're gonna do absolutely nothing with this. And, we're going to just put it aside. That's your control. Right now, everything smells the same, looks the same, and tastes the same. we're going to change our microvita, our power within ourselves. And there's something called biological mathematics. There's something called synchronization, which we will get into in the future. But if you notice, metronomes will synchronize, women's menstrual cycles synchronize, birds synchronize, crickets synchronize. So there's an underlying mathematical and energy of synchronization. Again, we're going to be getting to that as well. So in order to begin the path of synchronization, it's fascinating that it's everywhere. But for today's purpose, anybody, I imagine that most of you have done yoga. And Tadasana is simply aligning the top of your head, the Ajna chakra, or in Chinese medicine, it's called Bahui, or seventh chakra. And by standing straight up, you're going to also align the first chakra, which is, at the base of the pelvis. So from the top of the head, straight through the base of the pelvis, and then straight into the ground at the base of each foot, right behind the big toe. There's an indent right there. And that's called, on the bottom of your feet, that's kidney 1. So you have a kidney 1 on your left foot, and you have a kidney 1 on your right foot. Your feet should be about shoulder width. Shoulder width means your shoulders fit in between your feet. So you have a kidney 1 here and a kidney 1 here. And there's, let's say, an imaginary line between the two, kind of like the equator, right? So that's like your equator, and goes through your whole body. Again, upward quarks, downward quarks. From the top of the head through the base of the pelvis, seventh chakra, first chakra, and directly into the ground, that's like your North Pole and South Pole. So with the knees slightly bent, you've got your North Pole to your South Pole, and then you have your equator running through the body. When you stand like that, and right now I'm sitting like that, so I have my kidney points on the bottom of my feet, flat on the floor, and then I'm sitting straight up, upright. With Tadasana, some people's feet are closer together, further apart, whatever. You just have the understanding of the upward flow, North Pole, South Pole, and the equator flow at the same time. With that in mind, if you're standing, get that flow going. If you're sitting, get that flow going. See if you can find that place of peacefulness in your body. If you lean forward a little bit, you feel the body tighten, whether you're standing or sitting. And that's when the energy starts to tighten and your body's tightening. No good. Go back to that center point where things are flowing, everything's easy, standing or sitting. And then lean back a little bit, and you're going to feel, oh my goodness, I'm going to fall, whether you're standing or sitting. Okay. Find that central place. Okay. And again, we're going to put this up on the website, the microvitahealing.com. So you find that place, your energy starts to flow. Then take a piece of your orange and hold it. You can actually feel it in your hands. Okay. My hands are tingling. My hands are warm. My hands, the energy starting to flow. The microvita is starting to flow. And then probably like in your meditation or whatever, go to that place where you feel really good, whether if you choose a pleasant thought or just to feel the energy. I just feel like an effervescence coming out of the hands that naturally will happen when your body's in balance and your mind is calm. And with a period of time, and it doesn't take long at all, you can then, when you feel you're ready, take a moment, say, okay. To my mind, it's like the fruit is now, there's a little bit of vibrating going on. Okay. So when you have that, but I do this all day long. So it may take you guys a little bit longer, but with time, it's pretty instantaneous. I'm just going, quickly based upon time. So when you're ready, and practice this later, and you'll get more results the more practice that you do. Take your control, smell it, look at it, taste it, and then do the same with what your piece that you've let your microvita, your positive microvita vibrate through. Now this one is you could smell it so much more. Wines, you smell so much more. The wines become not as acidy right away. So it looks, if you can't see it, but you'll have to do it for yourself at your own place. This is a little bit brighter. There's a little bit more room coming out of it. Yeah. It's tastier. Don't believe me. Try it yourself. And we can, and we'll all be exploring how we can make this positive microvita better for all of us. And we're just using just the fruit for today's presentation. So we'll be using it for all sorts of things. So essentially, that's my piece of the puzzle here. So from Dr. Prouty's, we understand the plant energy and how that's used more and more, even the negative plants. And Dr. Nelson explained the science behind it and the quantum physics that is beginning to have an idea of how to explain it. And now we're in a great time where we get to explore it and hopefully help, science and medicine come together even more. So that's my piece. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm not sure I can see anybody, so you'll have to scream out or, let me know.
Please raise your hands if you have a question or ask.
Yeah, and just ask the question because I can't. My screen is very far away.
Anybody has question? Vasumati, Lois.
Yes, thank you so much. So we didn't go through the other half of, or the other portion of the fruit. And could you just describe very briefly, how do you imbue that then with bad or negative microvita? Do you just hate on it?
Yeah, I didn't want to play with that today because I don't want the negative microvita today. We were just fooling around back then. But yeah, if you want to play with that type of thing, again, you start your control, then you do your positive microvita, right? And then you hate on the other one. And what's really cool with the way that we did it is we wanted to see whether it was real or not. So we did it double blind. We were in another room. We knew what was going on. Nobody in the other room knew what was going on. And they were going, oh God, why did this one taste so much better than this one? Not really. And, with multiple dishes. So try it for yourself. But after you do the negative microvita, you're not going to want to eat that.
Joshua?
Hi, Jeff. That was great. Jeff, have you discovered that it is any different or maybe more pronounced with different types of food? Or suppose you were working with meat versus an orange. Would there be any difference in crudity or subtlety between the two?
We absolutely did that. Yeah, we did chicken, we did beef, and everybody said, my goodness, this tastes different than that. So yeah, we've done it with all sorts of foods because this was a teacher at the Culinary Institute at the State University of New York. So because he said, what are you talking about, this energy? We had lunch and I changed the energy of a lemon right in front of him. And that led to studying this. And then he was one who had the spectrum chromatography done. So it's a vast opening of research that we can do. Simply to answer your question, we've already done that successfully. People tasted the difference.
Good.
I want to try with homeopathy with you, Dr. Nelson. I would really like to take and figure out a way to double blind different formulas in homeopathy.
I am wondering, Jeffrey, if you could speak a little bit about the website.
Yeah, have Dr. Prouty talk about it because he's the, I'll say, the force behind it. His brilliance, he's got a PhD and he's our brilliant mind. I just look at it as a place for all of us to figure out Microvita. So it's not owned by us. It's a school for everybody to learn from. But Dr. Prouty should be explaining it.
Well, I'll just be very brief. Yeah, it's at www.microvitahealing.com. And it's just a brand new website. And so we have some introductory courses that you can take, and we have a free ebook that you can download and take a look at, which Jeffrey outlines in detail how his system of harmonetics works. So please download that book at the bottom of the webpage. And we have a lot of content material yet to come into the webpage. And so look forward to that. And yeah, please visit and please leave comments. And we look forward to hearing from you.
I would like to add one thing, which you'll see shortly. In the last 3 weeks, we've been working with a former Marine with PTSD after COVID, and there's a lot of people having these post-COVID syndromes. And we introduced him to the harmonetics and the Microvita. In 3 weeks, his life has really turned around. So what I like and what we've been doing is working with people who want to become first-tier operators, Navy SEALs, military people who there's no messing around. They're not fooling around. They're going, does this really work? And they found out that it does really work. As we talked about, we're on the, just the beginning of this. So with these minds that we have around us, we can get deeper into it, but we're already getting results. He simply went to the website and downloaded the first courses, and he practiced them at home and saw the results for himself. And that's why he came up here and said, okay, what was this? He's a Marine. He's like, show this to me. Let's do this. So he and his wife are going to be working with us on getting more and more understanding of the energy and the harmonetics and that relationship with Microvita.
Just thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, all three of you, and everyone who has been a part of this wonderful day.